I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. The courtroom felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in, the air thick and heavy. My hands were trembling so badly that I had to lock them together in my lap just to stop the shaking. Across from me, Daniel, my ex-husband, sat with that smug little smirk I'd seen 1,000 times before. The one that always meant he thought he'd already won. And then his lawyer stood up, tall, calm, his voice like a knife. "Your Honor," he began, "the evidence will show that Anna Collins is not the biological mother of the child in question." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I froze. Not the biological mother. What was he even saying? All I could do was stare at him, my mouth slightly open, while whispers rippled through the courtroom. Then Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked on mine, and mouthed one word: "Gotcha." My throat went dry. I could feel my lawyer shifting beside me, but I couldn't hear anything except the thud, thud, thud of my heart. And just when I thought my world had ended, my mother stood up. "My name is Anna Collins." And until that moment in court, I thought I knew exactly who I was, a 34-year-old single mom, doing my best to raise my beautiful 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Daniel and I had been fighting for custody for almost a year. It was messy, exhausting, and expensive. But I wasn't going to give up on my daughter. We had been college sweethearts once. I met Daniel during my junior year. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who always seemed to know exactly what to say. Back then, I thought his confidence was attractive. Later, I realized it was control. Still, in the beginning, it felt like a fairy tale. We got married 2 years after graduation, and when I found out I was pregnant, I thought life couldn't get any better. I remember holding Lily for the first time. She was so tiny, her little fingers curling around mine, her skin warm against my chest. I had no doubt in my mind that she was mine, but looking back, there were things I didn't question, things I should have. Daniel started changing after Lily was born. The late nights at the office, the cold silences at home. By the time Lily was 3, I'd caught him cheating, and that was it. I filed for divorce, packed our things, and moved out. The custody battle started almost immediately. Daniel didn't just want shared custody, he wanted full custody. And I couldn't understand why. He'd barely been involved when we were married. Why now? My lawyer told me Daniel was playing dirty, hiring private investigators, digging through my past, even calling old acquaintances to find something he could use against me. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened in that courtroom. The night before that hearing, I couldn't sleep. I'd been through a dozen court dates already, but something about this one felt different. Daniel had been walking into every meeting with this quiet confidence, like a man holding a secret card he couldn't wait to play. Even his texts had changed. No more petty insults or drawn-out arguments. Just short, clipped messages about seeing Lily soon and getting this over with. My lawyer, Marissa, had called me 2 days earlier. Her voice was tense, and she didn't mince words. "Anna, I think they're planning something big. They've been filing unusual motions and requesting sealed documents." When I asked her what that meant, she paused before saying, "It means they might know something we don't. And if they think it's explosive, they're going to drop it in court when you least expect it." I tried to brush it off. What could they possibly find? My life wasn't perfect, but it was clean. I didn't drink, didn't do drugs, never had a criminal record. The only thing I could imagine was maybe they'd dig up some embarrassing college Photo of me in ripped jeans and smeared eyeliner. But there was one thing I didn't tell Marissa. Something from the day Lily was born. It had been a long, grueling labor, 36 hours in the hospital, a blur of pain, exhaustion, and the faint smell of antiseptic. At one point, there'd been a sudden commotion in the hallway. A power outage, they said. The lights flickered, the machines beeped strangely. Nurses rushed in and out, their voices hushed and urgent. When I finally woke up enough to hold Lily, I didn't think twice. She was warm, breathing, beautiful. Mine, Daniel, was oddly quiet that day. He smiled for the photos, but I remember him stepping out of the room more than once to take phone calls. I told myself it was work. The years after were a slow unraveling. Daniel's ambition turned into arrogance, and his charm turned into sharp edges. He started making comments about my family, about my mother, in particular, saying she was too controlling, too involved. But my mother had always been my anchor. Margaret Collins was the kind of woman who could silence a room without raising her voice. She had this quiet steel about her, and she never let anyone, not even Daniel, intimidate her. When the divorce happened, she moved in with me and Lily without hesitation. She said it was temporary, just until I got my feet under me again, but secretly, I was glad she stayed. Lily adored her. And in the middle of all that chaos, it felt good to have someone steady in the house. Still, in the weeks leading up to the hearing, I noticed something strange about my mother. She'd been making more phone calls behind closed doors. One night, I passed her room and heard her say, "We can't keep this hidden forever." I stopped in the hallway, my heart pounding, but before I could knock, she ended the call and came out like nothing happened. When I asked who she'd been talking to, she just smiled faintly and said, "An old friend." I told myself it was nothing. But in court, when Daniel's lawyer made that announcement, I knew. Whatever my mother had been hiding, it was about Lily. The judge's brow furrowed, and he glanced toward Daniel's lawyer. "Mr. Harris," he said evenly, "are you making a claim or presenting evidence?" The lawyer didn't even flinch. "Your Honor, we have a certified paternity report from an independent lab. It clearly states that Miss Collins is not the biological mother of the child known as Lily Collins." The room erupted. Gasps, muffled whispers, the rustle of papers. Even the court stenographer stopped typing for a second. I sat frozen in my chair, my mouth dry, my mind trying to process words that didn't make sense together. Not the mother. How could that even be possible? I carried Lily for 9 months. I felt her kick inside me. I went through the agony of labor. "This is ridiculous," Marissa snapped, standing up beside me. "Your Honor, we object to the admission of any so-called evidence that was obtained without proper," but Harris cut her off smoothly. "The test was conducted with a sample from the child and compared against Miss Collins' DNA. The chain of custody is verifiable. We are prepared to call the lab director to testify." I could feel eyes boring into me from every direction. Some of the spectators looked curious, others judgmental. I wanted to disappear into the wooden bench, vanish into the cracks in the floor. The judge raised a hand. "Let's take a brief recess," he said, his voice calm but sharp. 10 minutes. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and the courtroom broke into a low roar of chatter. I turned to Marissa. "This is insane," I whispered. "They're lying. They have to be." Her eyes softened, but her jaw was tight. "Anna, I believe you. But we need to be ready for the possibility that they have more than just that report." And in that moment, a memory hit me like a freight train. The hospital room. The sudden blackout. The nurse who wheeled Lily away for routine tests and didn't return for almost an hour. Me, groggy from the anesthesia, barely able to lift my head. Daniel pacing in the corner, avoiding my eyes when I asked where she was. I'd pushed those moments away for years, telling myself they were harmless. Just the haze of a long labor. Now they came rushing back with terrifying clarity. Across the aisle, Daniel was leaning back in his chair, tapping his pen against the table. He caught my eye and gave me the smallest, coldest smile I'd ever seen. And then I noticed something I'd never seen before. Margaret, my mother, sitting stiffly in the back row. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on Daniel. And she looked afraid. The recess felt like a lifetime. I barely registered the chatter around me. The lawyers huddled. In the corners, the shuffle of people stretching their legs. My eyes kept flicking to my mother, still sitting there, rigid as stone. When the bailiff called everyone back in, I expected things to start up the way they always did, formal, controlled, cold. But before the judge could even settle into his seat, my mother rose from the back row. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and steady, though I could see the faint tremor in her hands. The room went silent. The kind of silence that sucks the air right out of your lungs. "Mrs. Collins," the judge said slowly, "this is not a public comment period. Please take your seat." But she didn't move. "I can't," she said simply, "because what's being said in this room isn't the whole truth." I turned in my seat to look at her, my stomach twisting. Her gaze wasn't on me, it was fixed on Daniel. And for the first time since I'd known her, my mother's eyes looked almost pitying. Daniel shifted in his chair, the smugness slipping from his face for just a second. "Your Honor," she continued, "my daughter may not be Lily's biological mother, but that doesn't mean Lily isn't her child." I blinked, my mind struggling to even make sense of the sentence. What did that mean? The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Collins, if you have information relevant to this case, you will need to be sworn in and questioned under oath." She nodded. "Once, then swear me in." The bailiff came forward, and within seconds, my mother was standing in front of the court clerk, raising her right hand. When she sat in the witness chair, she didn't look at me, not once. It was as if what she was about to say was something she'd rehearsed in her mind for years. "I'm here to tell you," she began, "that 6 years ago, in the hospital where Lily was born, there was an arrangement made. An arrangement to keep a child safe." Her words landed heavy, like stones hitting the floor. "An arrangement? Safe from what?" "Lily," my mother said, her voice softening for the first time, "was not supposed to be raised by Daniel. And if the truth had come out back then, he would have made sure she disappeared from Anna's life completely." I could feel every muscle in my body go rigid. What she was implying didn't make sense, and yet it did. Every strange thing I'd brushed off, every unanswered question, every quiet phone call, they all suddenly had weight. But before she could say more, Harris, Daniel's lawyer, was on his feet. "Objection. This is wildly irrelevant to the matter at hand." The judge raised a hand to silence him. "I'll decide what's relevant. Mr. Harris." "Mrs. Collins, you may continue." My mother took a breath, her eyes finally meeting mine. And in that moment, I knew whatever she was about to say next, it was going to change my life forever. Her gaze held mine for what felt like a lifetime, and for a split second, I saw it, the flicker of guilt. Then she turned back to the judge. 6 years ago," she said slowly, I learned something about Daniel's family. Something dangerous. And when Anna went into labor, I knew I had to act. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What are you talking about? I whispered, my voice barely audible. She didn't answer me directly. Instead, she looked at the judge. I arranged for Lily to be placed in Anna's arms that night. But she is not the child Anna gave birth to biologically. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, like I was falling. Like the air had been yanked from my lungs, my mother's voice didn't waver. I made the decision because the child Anna had carried would have tied her to Daniel forever, and Daniel's family would have used it to control her, to destroy her. Daniel shot up from his chair. This is insane. His voice cracked, his confident veneer shattering for the first time in months. My family is the one protecting her from. The judge slammed his gavel. Sit down, Mr. Collins. You will have your turn. I was gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles were white. Mom. What are you saying? You swapped my baby. She finally looked at me again, her eyes swimming with tears now. I saved you, she whispered. I saved both of you. Both of us. My voice broke. Yes, she said, nodding. Because the baby you carried was not Daniel's child. The words sliced through me. My breath caught in my chest. Not Daniel's child. That was impossible, wasn't it? Daniel's face had gone pale, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Mrs. Collins, the judge said, leaning forward. I will remind you that you are under oath. Are you telling this court that there was a deliberate switch of infants in the hospital, and that it was done with your knowledge and participation? Yes, my mother said without hesitation. The courtroom erupted again, voices overlapping, reporters scribbling notes, a woman in the back covering her mouth in shock. But all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears and the echo of her words. The baby you carried was not Daniel's child, which meant it wasn't Lily who wasn't mine. It was me who wasn't hers. The sound in the courtroom faded into a dull roar in my head. I was still staring at my mother, her words looping over and over like a broken record. I remembered lying in that hospital bed, the fluorescent lights flickering above me, the haze of medication making everything feel far away. I remembered Daniel stepping outside to make a call just minutes after I told him I was being taken for an emergency C-section. I remembered the nurse who avoided my eyes when she wheeled Lily in, and now, piece by jagged piece, the puzzle I'd never even known existed was snapping into place. Mom, I managed, my voice shaking. If the baby I carried wasn't Daniel's, then who? That's enough, Daniel barked from across the aisle. His voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it, and there was a note of something else in it, not anger, not confidence, fear. The judge cut him off. Mr. Collins, sit down. Mrs. Collins, you will answer your daughter's question. My mother's lips trembled, but she didn't look away from me. I don't know for certain, she admitted, but I know that during your pregnancy, Daniel wasn't faithful. And I also know he had people watching you, people who didn't want that baby to be born. The air in the courtroom felt heavier, pressing down on my chest. What do you mean, didn't want the baby to be born? Marissa asked, leaning forward. Margaret's eyes shifted toward Daniel, then back to me. Because Anna, that child's father, was someone Daniel's family considered an enemy. And if they'd found out the truth, they would have taken that baby away from you permanently. The room went still again. Daniel's jaw twitched, his eyes narrowing into slits. Your Honor, Harris interjected quickly, none of this has any bearing on the custody. It has everything to do with it, the judge snapped. If the court was deliberately misled about the identity of the child, then these proceedings are tainted. I will hear the rest of this testimony. I felt like I was breathing through water. If what my mother was saying was true, then I hadn't just lost a child I thought was mine. I had lost a child I never even had the chance to know. Mom. I said again, my voice barely a whisper. Where is my baby? Her eyes filled with tears. Gone, she said softly. Taken away the same night you gave birth. That's why I made sure you left the hospital with Lily instead. She needed you, and you needed her. I wasn't going to let them win. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. This wasn't just a custody case anymore. This was a war I hadn't even known I was fighting. Daniel slammed his palm on the table. Your Honor, this is nothing but a stunt. My ex-mother-in-law is fabricating a soap opera to distract from the fact that Anna has no legal claim to custody. The judge's eyes hardened. Mr. Collins, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Marissa leaned toward me, whispering, stay quiet. Let this play out. He's losing control. My mother, still in the witness chair, folded her hands calmly in her lap. But I could see the faintest tremor in her fingers. I'm not here to entertain, she said. I'm here because the truth has been buried for 6 years, and it's time it came out. The judge nodded. Mrs. Collins, you may proceed. Her gaze moved slowly across the room until it landed on Daniel. Lily's biological mother, she said clearly, was your half-sister, Claire. The air seemed to vanish from the courtroom. Even the reporters looked stunned, their pens frozen mid-air. Daniel's face drained of color. You don't know what you're talking about, but my mother didn't flinch. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Claire was young, scared, and your family wanted the child gone. She came to me for help, knowing I would protect the baby from you and your father. I agreed to raise her as my granddaughter's child. Because it was the only way to keep her safe, I stared at her, my head spinning. My granddaughter's child. I repeated, my voice cracking. You mean Lily? Yes, she said. Simply. I placed Lily in your arms that night because I knew you would love her without question. And you did. The judge turned to Daniel. Is this true? Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. His jaw worked, but no words came out. Answer the question, Mr. Collins. The judge pressed. She's lying, he finally muttered, but there was no conviction behind it. Marissa seized the opening. Your Honor, this revelation changes the nature of these proceedings entirely. Not only has my client been Lily's de facto parent since birth, but Mr. Collins has knowingly withheld critical information about the child's origins. Harris tried to object, but the judge held up a hand. We will get to the legal ramifications. Right now, I want to know why Mr. Collins kept this a secret if it's untrue. Daniel shifted in his chair, his eyes darting toward the gallery. And for the first time since the divorce began, I saw it the cracks in his armor. This wasn't the smug, unshakable man I'd been battling for custody. This was someone cornered and desperate. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but seething. My family had nothing to do with this, the post cover-up. My half-sister was unstable. She couldn't take care of herself, let alone a child. My father did what was necessary to ensure that baby was raised properly. Margaret's eyes flashed. Properly? You mean erased? Just like your family has done for decades with anyone who doesn't fit their perfect image. The judge's gavel cracked against the desk. Enough. We will not turn this into a shouting match. Mrs. Collins, you will explain exactly why you believed the Collins family wanted Lily gone. My mother took a slow breath, and when she spoke, her voice was quieter, almost heavy with the weight of it. Because Lily's father was a man your family hated more than anyone. And that hate wasn't just personal, it was dangerous. The room was silent. Even the hum of the overhead light seemed to fade. Daniel muttered something under his breath, but it was too low for anyone to catch. Margaret didn't look away from the judge. Lily's father was Victor Ramirez. A collective gasp rolled through the courtroom. I didn't know the name, but from the look on Daniel's face, I could tell it mattered. The judge glanced at Daniel. I assume from your reaction that you know who that is. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. He's a criminal. He ran an operation that your father tried to destroy. Margaret cut in sharply. And when he failed, your family swore no bloodline of his would be part of yours. When Claire came to me, pregnant, she was terrified. She told me they had threatened her life if she kept the baby. I felt my stomach twist. Are you saying they would have hurt her over Lily? I'm saying, my mother said slowly, they would have made sure Lily never saw the light of day. That's why I acted that night. Because I knew you, Anna. I knew you'd protect her with your life. And you have. Daniel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. This is outrageous. She has no proof, just the word of a bitter old sit down. Mr. Collins, the judge barked. And consider yourself warned. Marissa leaned in toward me. If what your mother is saying is true, this destroys his custody case. It's over for him. But I couldn't focus on winning. My mind was stuck on the name Victor Ramirez, and on the possibility that the man who fathered Lily might still be out there. And if Daniel's family hated him this much, what would happen if he found out about her? The judge tapped his pen against the bench, his expression unreadable. This court will recess until tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I want sworn statements from all parties regarding the events in question, and I will be requesting official hospital records from the night in question. The gavel came down, and just like that, the session was over. But no one moved. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath. Daniel was the first to break the stillness, muttering something to Harris as they hurried out the side door. His stride was stiff, controlled the walk of a man who knew the ground beneath him was cracking. I turned toward my mother. We're talking about this now. But she shook her head. Not he. Her eyes darted toward the far end of the courtroom, where two men in dark suits lingered near the door, watching us with unnerving stillness. Who are they? I whispered. She didn't answer, just took my hand and steered me toward the hallway. But before we could leave, a voice stopped us. Mrs. Collins? We turned, and a tall man stepped forward from the gallery. He was older, mid-50s maybe, with sharp features and the kind of posture that spoke of years carrying authority. He held out a business card. My name is Detective Alvarez. I think we need to talk about Victor Ramirez. I blinked at him, startled. Why? Who are you to him? His jaw tightened. I was his friend, and the godfather he appointed for his unborn child. Before he disappeared, my stomach dropped. Disappeared? Alvarez nodded grimly. 6 years ago. The same week your daughter was born. My mother's grip on my arm tightened. We're not having this conversation in the hallway. Alvarez glanced over his shoulder as if checking for someone. Fine. But tomorrow, when court resumes, I'll be here. And I have a statement to give that might change everything you think you know about Lily's father. And with that, he slipped his card into my palm and walked away, leaving the faint scent of cigarette smoke in his wake. I stared at the card, my pulse pounding. If Alvarez was telling the truth, then this wasn't just about keeping Lily safe from Daniel's family. This was about finding out what happened to the man who might have died to protect her. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, and curious onlookers murmured nervously as the judge took his seat. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. My mother sat beside me, calm but tense, her eyes fixed on the door. A hush fell over the room as Detective Alvarez was sworn in. He adjusted his suit, cleared his throat, and began speaking. "Your Honor, my name is Detective Carlos Alvarez. I was a close friend of Victor Ramirez before he disappeared 6 years ago. I have information regarding the circumstances surrounding his disappearance and how it relates to this case." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Daniel's face tightened. Harris shot Alvarez a suspicious glare. Alvarez continued, "Victor Ramirez was a man with many enemies, some of whom were extremely influential. Around the time Lily was born, he confided in me that he feared for his child's safety, specifically from certain members of the Collins family." I felt my stomach drop. "Members of the Collins family?" I whispered under my breath. "Yes," Alvarez said, turning his gaze toward Daniel. "He told me he feared they would remove his child from the mother, Claire, to cover up personal and financial disputes within their family. Shortly after, Victor went into hiding to protect himself and the baby." Daniel's chair scraped as he shifted uncomfortably. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, realizing any objection would only make him look guilty. Alvarez pulled out a folder and handed it to the judge. "I have documented communications from Victor to me, describing threats from Mr. Collins' relatives. These were sent around the time Lily was born. Additionally, there is evidence showing attempts to trace Victor's location, all blocked by individuals connected to the Collins family." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Collins, do you wish to respond?" Daniel's face went pale. His voice shook slightly. This is circumstantial. There's no proof linking me directly." Alvarez's eyes narrowed. "Sir, it's not just circumstantial. There are verified phone records, emails, and witness statements. Victor specifically named your father and your cousin as threats to his child's safety." The courtroom erupted into whispers again. I squeezed my mother's hand. Finally, she whispered, "See? This is why I protected Lily. It wasn't just about custody, it was life or death." My chest felt tight, but a strange wave of relief washed over me. The pieces were starting to fit together. The blackout, the hospital confusion, the frantic calls, it all made sense now. Daniel's smug, untouchable demeanor had crumbled completely. And for the first time, I realized that the fight wasn't just about legal custody. It was about the truth finally coming to light. The courtroom felt like it had shrunk around me. Every eye was on Daniel, and I could see the panic creeping into his features. His lips were pressed so tightly together it looked painful, and he kept shifting in his chair like a cornered animal. Alvarez set the folder down on the judge's bench. "All documents are verified and timestamped. Victor Ramirez specifically requested that Lily be placed in the care of someone he could trust, someone who would love her unconditionally. That person, he told me, was Anna Collins." The words hung in the air. I blinked, trying to process them. Me. Lily's father had trusted me without ever knowing me, without ever meeting me. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. "You've always been her mother, Anna. Nothing has changed." The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Collins, do you deny the allegations regarding your family's interference and threats to Victor Ramirez? Daniel opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His face twisted, a mixture of fury and helplessness. He swallowed hard, finally muttering, This is ridiculous. Lies. All lies. Marissa leaned close to me. Don't speak. Let the evidence do its work. Alvarez continued. Victor entrusted the child to Mrs. Collins and ensured Anna became her legal guardian. There are sworn affidavits, hospital documents, and even a notarized statement from Claire confirming this arrangement. All of it points to Anna having been the child's rightful caregiver from the start. I could feel tears prick at my eyes. Everything I had feared losing Lily, being accused of something I didn't do, it was unraveling. But more than relief, I felt a profound sense of connection. This little girl had been mine in every way that mattered, even if the blood wasn't mine. The judge leaned back in his chair. Given the testimony, the documents, and the evidence presented, it is clear that the child's best interests are served by remaining with Miss Collins. Further, the court finds that attempts to manipulate or conceal the truth regarding the child's origins will be taken into account when considering any future proceedings. Daniel's shoulders slumped. His lawyer muttered under his breath, but even he knew the fight was over. I turned to my mother, my voice shaking. "Mom, you saved her. You saved us both." Margaret smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and relief washing over her face. "I only did what I had to. You did all the hard work. You loved her every day. That's what mattered." I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of 6 years lift off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. Not because the courtroom had ruled in my favor, but because the truth had finally come out. And as I looked down at Lily, asleep in my arms, I whispered softly, "No matter what, you're my daughter. Always." The courtroom slowly emptied, leaving only a few lingering spectators and the staff backing up. I still held Lily close, feeling her small fingers curl around mine. Every worry, every sleepless night, every anxious moment over custody, it all melted away in that instant. My mother walked beside me, her hand brushing my back gently. "Anna," she said softly, "there's something else you need to know." I looked at her, heart tightening. "What is it?" She paused, taking a deep breath. "Victor. He didn't disappear by accident. He went into hiding because he knew Daniel's father and cousin were dangerous. They wanted to control the child's future, and if he hadn't acted, Lily's life could have been in danger." I tightened my hold on Lily. "So all these years, you were protecting her, protecting me, from them?" Margaret nodded. "Yes, and I needed to make sure that you didn't just survive, but that you could thrive with her safely in your arms. That was always the plan." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I smiled through them. Relief, love, and gratitude surged in a way I couldn't put into words. Outside the courthouse, the sun was breaking through the clouds. Light spilled across the steps, and I felt it reflecting my own new beginning. Daniel and his lawyer had disappeared. No words exchanged. Their battle was over, at least for now, and the truth had won. I knelt down to Lily's level, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "You're safe, sweetheart. Mommy will never let anyone hurt you. Not ever." She smiled sleepily, and I felt a warmth spread through me I hadn't felt in years. Margaret hugged me tightly. "You were always her mother, Anna. Blood doesn't make a parent. Love does. And you've proven that every single day." I held her close, feeling the bond of our family stronger than any secret, any lie, any twisted plot from Daniel's family. As we walked away from the courthouse steps together, I realized something crucial. The past could hurt, it could deceive, it could even terrify. But love, courage, and truth always had a way of finding their path. And in that moment, with Lily in my arms and my mother by my side, I knew we had found ours. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? What do you want to hear from us in next video? If you have any incident in your life, please let us know. We would love to share your story.